Okay, good evening. Welcome. That's not broadcasting. You have to hit a record button.
We're live. Go. Begin.
We have one button to hit. All right. Welcome. The Washington Township Historical Society meeting of September 2023. We are also being zoomed and recorded. So my name is John Weed. I'm president of the organization. And I'd like to ask each person in the room here to identify themselves, since we have a really good, almost pre-COVID turnout tonight, which is remarkable. And so if we begin at the far back and ask, yes, please. You can stand up. Tim Swenson is hiding in the back room, and he is our IT fellow. And please.
Nancy Pratt.
Thank you. Corner, please. Betty.
And I heard them.
All right, great. Thank you. All right, thank you. Al? All right, please, Nick. Right. Thank you, please. Miss.
I've lived in friend of Nancy's, and we were interested to see this presentation. And I've been a friend of Nancy's for a long time. I've lived in this community for 29 years.
Fantastic. And your son has done well.
And my son,
I'm sorry. Okay.
named Garrett.
Yes. With me, yeah. Fantastic. Okay. Thank you, please. Oh. Sir. Fantastic. Thank you. Sir.
My name's Osira. I came here August 1st of 5 weeks ago.
Welcome.
Very new to the area.
I can't hear.
Chicago.
Thank you. All right. Thank you, ma'am.
Excuse me, are we supposed to be able to hear? I can barely hear.
Ardenwood Farm for over 25 years. I've lived in Fremont most of my life, and I am a friend and also an admirer of Nancy, because she inspired me to become an artist. I've just painted a couple of things, but she was my inspiration.
Thank you. Miss.
My name's Annabelle.
Oh, fantastic.
My name is Charlie. And I've
Okay, great. I'm John Weed. I'm president of the organization, and Paul Sethi, vice president, and he'll be making the introduction tonight. And in another life, he is president of the Alameda County Water District Board.
John is a fellow director on ACWD for many years. So am I. We often like to joke that Washington Township Historical Society is not a subsidiary of the Alameda County Water District. My family moved here in early 1962 to Mission San Jose, and I grew up right here within blocks of the museum. And I've had a lifelong interest in history and the arts and music in the local area. So I'm going to lead you off with an introduction to Nancy Pratt. I had an article that was submitted to the Tri-City Voice last week, which was abbreviated, but I became interested in Nancy many years ago, seeing her artwork around our various communities. And then she had her exhibit here at the museum the past few months. So I contacted her and asked her if she would like to give us a presentation. And thank you, Nancy, for accepting the invitation and being willing to share all of your history and insights in your artwork. As I explained in our newsletter and article in the Tri-City Voice, a lot of us are new to the style of montage history art that Nancy does, and she is world renowned. With her artwork and in many private collections around the world. And so we're very honored to have her here tonight to give her presentation. I had a wonderful 1-hour interview with Nancy on the phone a couple of months ago. And so I'm just going to lead off with some questions which I had asked her and ask her to share a little bit of her own story before she goes into her formal presentation. So Nancy, the first thing that we had talked about is where you had grown up and your childhood interest in art. Can you talk about that and what led you further in life?
Well, thank you, Paul. I'm so happy to be here and so happy to meet you finally. It's just really an honor. And what a way to I don't know if I'm coming in or not, but so, and I thank you for my friends being here and for my long lost friends I haven't seen in such a long time. Just glad to see you again. Thank you for coming. Okay, I did grow up in Fresno, but I was born in Bremerton, Washington, which was a naval shipyard during the war. My parents were working in the shipyard. And so I think that I was conceived at the time that World War II ended. And so I was born in 1946. Anyway, I counted back 9 months from March. That's what it seems like it was. So then when I was 6 months old, am I holding this up close enough? Okay. I really can't hear myself, actually. Thank you. When I was 6 months, my parents moved to Fresno. And eventually they bought a couple motels on Highway 99, which was way out. There's no neighborhood there. And I'm so glad they put in a swimming pool because that's really where I spent my time from February through November. I would swim in Fresno. It's hot there. But I had a lot of alone time. I did have 2 siblings, which were younger. And what I liked to do was draw and paint. What I had for paint was those little children's paint boxes. And I really did a lot of that. I love to paint my idea of interior design for our house and for the motel rooms. And then my father had me painting 1 year inside the entire motel and 1 year outside the entire motel. So every year I was painting. So I kind of tease and say, I was born with a paintbrush. Welcome. So where am I? So that's kind of how I got started with art.
Mentioned Roding Park
Yep.
and train watching, and the Roding family is very much attached to our area with the California nursery property. Can you relate or share a story from there?
Well, I purposely put that Roding Park in there because I only lived a few blocks away from there. And before you get into Roding Park, there's a nice railroad track. And my mother used to put me into one of those radial flyer wagons, the red one. And we would walk down to the railroad track and around Roding Park. And during the daytime, we would go to Roding Park quite often. It, you know what, I'm blanking out about the history why it's there. Bob. Anyway, they had a park there.
So what about junior high art classes and getting interested in watercoloring?
Okay. Well, just prior to junior high, or my junior high classes, my father told me I was maybe 12 while we're at the motel, and he told me, I don't want you doing art. He said, I want you to study hard, go to college, and marry a smart man. And there he is back there, Bob. And he's so smart. He told me, what do you want to do now that we're married? I says, I want to take art classes. He says, go ahead, take art classes. So we were in Pueblo, Colorado at the time. And I took my first art class there. Oh, I didn't tell you about the junior high art class. I was required to take an art class in junior high. And I did. And the teacher said I was a dynamic artist, but I was obeying my father. And I did not pursue art. Education was the biggest deal for my parents. They didn't care about nothing else except that I get that education and marry a smart man. So that's where that came in from my art background. Do you have any more questions?
Yes.
So when did you pick up art again in life and started to explore various types of styles of art, and what led you finally to montage type portraits?
Okay. Well, here in Fremont area, we have the Fremont Art Association. And there was a wonderful woman named Evangeline Johnson who was teaching art, and we just hit it off so well. And I loved going to her art classes. And then I went on to, I have it all written down. I can't remember a thing now. But what made me pick up the brush for montages?
How did you become interested in that style of art? What inspired you?
That style of art was my style. Nobody does it. Nobody does. Nobody does a historical montage type work that I have ever seen or heard of. But there have been some in the old days. Anyway, so one of the other slides here, it talks about hit the button.
Hit the red button? Oh, right. There we go.
There we are. So I still had this ingrained in me that I need to study and go to college. So I did. And when I got into my master's program there at Santa Clara University, I realized I don't need, this is not for me. I should not go into this goal of marriage, family, child counseling. And I decided to take up art at Ohlone. And then when I saw some of the student work of people that were coming out of Chabot College, man, I went over to Chabot. And there I met John Commissar, and he introduced me to this style of montage. And John Commissar and I were just buddies for years. I took all of his classes and all of his workshops. So his workshops were at Asilomar. And so finally I said, you know, I want to teach art classes myself. And I put on a workshop at Asilomar myself. And all the people from my church came. We all wore berets and had a good time together. So I was off and running. I was teaching art classes at the mall here and the mall in Pleasanton and at various art supply stores, including Michael's. And I also taught art classes in my home. So about 5 years into teaching art classes, I joined up with, click the button. No, Newark. There. I joined up with Shirley Sisk with Love Newark, and they wanted to start the Arts in Schools program. And I thought, well, I'd like to help with that. So I joined the cultural arts people portion of Love Newark. And I suggested that they could make some money to have this art program in the schools by selling prints if I made a montage of the history of Newark. And that's how I got started with montages. I felt good about being able to do that. And I didn't even think about, can I actually do this? I just did it. I just had, the thought came to my mind. And then, yeah. So I also met Bruce McGregor, and he really helped me a lot with the research. Gave me materials. Did I answer your question? Okay. So I gave the Love Newark the rights to the prints. So I gave them license to sell the prints. So they paid for the printing of the 2,000 copies. And we used a Heidelberg press, which is the state of the art for lithographs. And it just has the right register for getting the image in the right colors. They were all 18 by 24s. And the Love Newark still has prints, and that's where to get them because I don't have any anymore. Okay, so here we are with that painting. And the main features show up pretty well. I think the train here, where's my, oh, you have the, I was gonna put the red light on the okay. This here is really supposed to be the main feature. So it's up close. Looking at it now, I don't think it shows up as the main. Looking at it now, it doesn't show up as the main feature. It probably needs something really light behind it for you artists that care, or something really dark behind it to make it show up better. So I would say, looking at that now, that's one of my bloopers. But this was a major thing to Bruce really helped me with getting this image of a 440. It was a Baldwin locomotive, and this one is the one that came through. Oh, I was gonna say, I was trying to remember the date. Now I can't remember. So I need to switch to my copy here. 1876. And the people behind this train thing was James Fair. James Fair got his money from the Comstock silver mines and put in this narrow gauge railroad that went from Alameda to Santa Cruz. Then another main feature here is this church. Used to be St. Edward's, and it's changed hands probably a number of times now. I really enjoyed painting all the details and learning about the architecture on it. And Bruce McGregor told me that this church was built by the money of the railroad, and they put $5,000 into it. And this really was a railroad town. The railroad built this Newark Pavilion, and I was saying earlier that they had dog races in the back where all these greyhounds would chase the rabbit, and people from San Francisco would come on this Newark ferry, which I'd said earlier was the largest ferry on the bay. So the railroad also put in this trolley, it was a Carter Brothers trolley for South Pacific Coast Railroad, SPC, right there. And this wasn't too common to find one of these, so it became a celebrity. It went from the Newark railroad station to Centerville to take Newark kids to school in Centerville and to bring produce to the people in Centerville. And I learned that with 2 of these horses, they could pull 7 boxcars plus the trolley clear to Centerville, which was 3 miles really. So most everything in this town, like the Carter Brothers and the Wedgwood stove, were backups for the train. And Carter Brothers built the cars, and Wedgwood stoves built parts that needed to be done. And eventually they became, this was a back shop for the trains and the parts, but eventually they became Wedgwood stoves, and they became famous all over the US.
Jonathan Niles. It's great.
One of our audience here just said she bought one of these Wedgwood stoves just recently. Yes, Paul?
Nancy, can you talk about the salt works that you feature here?
Okay.
Which are still ever present.
Yeah. Yeah, we take them for granted almost now. Well, the Indians realized this about the salt works in the beginning, and later it just kept getting bigger and bigger. And they had railroad tracks going out to the salt works, so that they can process it and get it going to the rest of the United States. I think the man named Plummer was involved with that. And they would take the water from each of the different ponds from these Archimedes wind pumps. And I was just telling folks earlier that if they want to see something like that, there is one more like this one out at the off the Hayward Eden Landing. What freeway is that one right there? 92. Yeah, so I was astonished with that. Seeing that there, astonished. Mm-hmm.
We advance a slide on your presentation. You have quite a number here.
Oh, right. I'll learn how to do this eventually. So the methodology for doing my paintings is, this one is about the research and how I use different books and interviews. I love interviewing with people that are really knowledgeable about the subject that I'm trying to pursue. Such as for the Newark one, I went to Stanford. They have the Greens Library over there, it's called. And I had to use these kind of like white gloves that are down here because the paper for the Baldwin locomotives was like crackers. It would just break. It would just crumble. But the research helped me find out what colors to paint the Baldwin locomotive that we had. So meeting those people was great. It's important to so yeah, it can take a while to paint one of these with all the research that I do and all the rough drafts. It can take 6 to 8 months. Okay. More methodology. And what I try to do is determine what are the 3 main things I need to put in a picture and what are the 3 secondary things and 3 tertiary. And that is a lot of fun, actually, after I get all the information I can and try to determine, well, what is really going to be useful here, in my opinion. And I'm the artist, so I decide. Yeah, and all my paintings, I like to ask myself, what is good and what is true and what is beautiful, so that it would be exciting to all my senses. And more methodology. I use pencils to start off with my draft work. And that first draft might just be a placemat at the restaurant. And just kind of get a feel for what I might place as the most important 3 subjects. And maybe get a feel for what kind of border I'd like to put in. So that's always exciting because it gets me motivated to keep going. And then I do so many drafts. I don't bother counting because it's a lot. But for my clients, I tell them that I would like to at least give them 3 opportunities to choose the final draft. So if they want to add something or take something away, if something is important to them, I let them have a lot of input right there. And yeah, so that's what I set it up there. Let's see. For the best materials, I like to use the Arches 300 pound. It's real thick. Most people don't use it, but I think it's very forgiving, and that's important for watercolors to know. But we'll forgive them for their bloopers. And I also use a big, tall, 5-foot roll of paper that I ordered from England. And I will tell you a little bit more about that later. So I have several palettes. Most of them have these really good paints in them. One palette is just for the different reds that I might put in a tile, roof tiles. Because you know, that is so much fun to do roof tiles like on the top of the missions and so forth. And have a variety of reds. I also have a palette for portraits. I have a couple palettes for portraits. And then I have a palette that's just opaque colors and another one that's just transparent colors and so forth. And then I found lately this bloopers. When I make bloopers, I can use this watercolor paper ground. And it comes wet in a jar. It's there's two kinds. One is for rough paper, which I usually use most of the time. I use as they called it, rough, cold press. And then there's another kind of paper called hot press, and it's really smooth. It's a lot of fun to use for a different look, which I'm not an expert in for sure, but I want to be more expert as things keep going for me. And then it's really important to have clean water and paper towels to help make changes on bloopers. And I never give up on bloopers. I mean, after all that work and research, my goodness, I don't want to waste what I put in. So I try really hard and I never give up until I fix the darn thing. Okay, some of the tools are crazy, but I use a toothbrush to spatter, and I could show you an example. Oops. Did I wreck things? I was trying to get back to the Newark painting. Yeah. And then can we get rid of this right here?
Unfortunately, no. Online, they will not see it. But
Well,
I'll see if I can move it a bit.
this stuff right here, that's spatter with a toothbrush. And my little friend here, Annabelle, she already is an expert at it. Oh, I was going to tell you another blooper about this picture. And that's this. This area here is like a stage, and it helps support some of the main focal points, and that one too. But I painted all of this color at one time, and one of my friends says, Nancy, it looks like it's underwater. Oh my goodness, my eyes popped open big. I said, it looks like it's underwater. So I found this paint color. It's a gouache, and it's for skin color. And I loved it on here. It kind of looked like a dry ground. And this was really important discovery for me for the rest of my paintings. Lots of learning as I go along. Lots. Okay. So we're now at Pleasanton. And Pleasanton was having their 100th anniversary, and they were going to celebrate big. And Bob, my husband, was working there, and he told me about this and suggested I check out the museum. And sure enough, they were interested in a montage of the history of Pleasanton for that anniversary. And boy, they were proud of themselves. They were as proud as peacocks. And I loved a whole bunch of them. The women that were assistants were just wonderful and made me feel really great. So here we go. You see any more of this stuff right here? That's what it is. What I learned from Newark. And I loved it. So the main focus on in this painting is supposed to be right there, right? And this was a 440 from 1869. It came from Sacramento on its first run into Pleasanton and then into Niles Canyon and into Niles to join up with, as at the junction there in Niles, with other private railroads that would take this train, this engine, to Oakland and Alameda to complete the Transcontinental Railroad. And the people in this town were just so excited when that engine came through. There was a big Spanish family called the Bernals. Have you heard of them? They've got a big street by that name. And one of the Bernal boys jumped onto this train and wanted to polish everything. But he wasn't the only one. There was a lot of people from town. Just, they're so thrilled they jumped on there and polished up all that gold. And this here, there's the barrel there is Russian blue. I've learned more about, but these are the right colors for it. And I was really happy to have that, to get the accuracy on that painting. Anyway, when this Bernal boy was on that train and on the engine and polishing, he fell off. And he wasn't the same anymore. He really got hurt badly in his brain. And I was just impressed that that family really took care of him and helped him recover and become the best he could be. And he became the salesman in their local store. Now, the man that was telling me this story is the Bernal himself. And so I felt pretty honored to get to know that family a little bit. That's just a side story for my own memorable experience.
Nancy,
Yes.
before you go, can you talk about the border here? Because you've got the vineyards, which were, the original vineyards of California, and you have the roses. And annually, Pleasanton has always had the annual Rose Festival.
Right. The Rose Festival is really celebrating the Jackson Perkins company. So I put in all these special roses that Jackson Perkins company had. And this is our California quail and oak leaves. Yes, there were lots of vineyards there. I'm thinking this may have been part of the Orloff family. And this would be their dairy farm. Dagmar Orloff Fulton was the head of this women's club. No, I'm sorry. She was head of the museum, Pleasanton Museum. And she was my go-to person, my contact person. And I put her there in front of the museum just to honor her. I told her that. And
For those of you that don't know, the quail is California's state bird. Yeah. Beautiful bird.
and I got this quail from the naturalists at Sonoma. They had it in the freezer, and they let me paint from that quail.
You also have the Alviso adobe, one of the oldest adobes
Alviso adobe
above the hotel.
above the hotel. That is Cottinger's. Yeah, Cottinger also was the one who first built the hotel that was here. And he had vineyards. So he was the judge for a while, and he turned his barn into a jail, and his house was nearby. He would hold court at his house, and then he had dug a tunnel from his house to the jail. He must have had problems with his prisoners if he had to dig a tunnel to get from his house to the jail. Anyway, this still stands. And I was just by there the other day, and they were selling something that I thought was interesting. Maybe it was antiques, I can't remember. And so what else? This here is still in town. It started out as First Presbyterian Church of Pleasanton. And I remember sitting on the corner across the street to sketch this and get my perspective on the details. That was something I just loved to do. But I remember feeling awkward that I was sitting in the street curve drawing. And this up here is actually hops. And Pleasanton was once the largest hop producer. I can't remember if it was California, but it probably was. And my friend here, Dagmar Orloff, she says, don't put anything in about the hops people, the hops farmers. Yes.
I also would like to point out the racetrack where you have the horses, because that is the oldest continuing racetrack in America. The one in Pleasanton.
Yes, it is.
A lot of people don't know that.
And, you know, my good friend Dagmar here, she didn't really want me to put that in at all. She had a lot of requirements. Now, I was attracted to Dagmar because she is Danish and I'm Danish. So I learned something that verified what I'm thinking from my own grandfather, that he had ideas and they thought they were right. So Dagmar also didn't want me to put anything in about the Indians that were here. And so I already told you about the racetrack and about the hops. There were a few other things. Yes.
There's a lot of stuff here that I didn't know.
Do you get a history, a printed history that goes with it? Well, for this presentation, I'm
Offer Nancy with all the background. So you no, I'm not taking it up, but we joked about it because she does have templates of each of the paintings on her website with identifying details on what's in each painting.
And that's what's really important to me. I'm sure a lot of people who are in the history of the area, and the further we get away from the roots, the more we lose. And it's great.
well, thank you. I love it. So we can just talk forever. Okay. There's so much I could tell you, but the time is really going. All right, Fremont. Does anybody here know Phil Holmes?
We all do.
All right. Well, I've been trying to remember how I met Phil. I really am. My pastor at my church, First Presbyterian Church, Fremont, he wants to know how I met Phil Holmes, and I just can't remember. He likes it. He wants to know because after working with Phil, thank you. I just asked him, where does he go to church? And I was looking for a church. So it's because of him I ended up at First Presbyterian Church, no, Fremont. What? Oh, yes, he did. She did. I used to love sitting on the piano bench with Louise, and we would go through every single song in the hymnal. Loved it. You would like that too, wouldn't you? Okay. So yeah, we unveiled at Clark's Hall, which is right, which is right here. That's where I unveiled this painting.
Go back one slide.
Oh, forward? What?
Oh, there. The people that you work with on this one.
Oh, do you want me to talk about my Fremont picture? No.
Yes. Sorry.
Okay, so yes, the main focal point is up there and right there and right here. And guess what that is? That's the one that came out of where? Yeah, it came out of Sacramento through Pleasanton and into Niles Canyon. So that's Central Pacific Coast Railroad. No, Central Pacific Railroad, sorry. And that would have come here in 1869. So I used to be a docent here. I was working with Jan Southworth, Hitter, and she's the one that organized the first bunch of volunteers. And I was first. I was the first. What did I miss? I mean, I missed holding my microphone up here. Yeah, there's Washington High. So I don't have it all together yet.
You've got the Warm Springs Hotel, that later became the Stanford property.
Right.
Stanford property.
Yeah, that's the Warm Springs Hotel.
There's Centerville Presbyterian Church on the left there.
How about that? Yeah. This here is a I forgot the name of this boat here. Anyway, they use this a lot to fish and hunt for ducks in and out of those reeds. Like at Drawbridge Bridge, yes. So the city of Fremont asked me, why in the world did I put this here and this here? This is Charlie Chaplin, of course, and this here is a blue-bellied lizard. Well, I wanted to put in the most common animal for this area. And I was told by the East Bay Regional Park naturalists that it is the blue-bellied lizard. Oh, you do? Okay, good. So there you go. And what I learned about this church by studying all this local area is that it was used on the maps that were drawn for people to get here to this area. And that the maps would show this figure and this figure as a location for now you're in Fremont area. And so I was impressed that it had such renown to be put on the maps as a symbol for the area. Now, does anybody know what my it was up. Is it up now? Is it working? Okay. So my big blooper was not thinking through about this flag. It only has 13 stars on it. So I finally found a friend who could tell me what to do to fix the problem. Grace Ann. She told me about a pen called a shell pen, and it has a white gel. So I'm going to be going back into my flags here and putting in more stars. Anybody see any more bloopers? I don't know of any. That
So I would guess on the flag, 'cause- oh, yeah, help.
anyway, I really enjoyed doing this, and I'll tell you, Cloverdale Creamery was ecstatic. Okay, here we go. Now, Mission San Jose. They were getting ready to celebrate their 200th anniversary. The mission started in 1796. So they contacted me about this, and I worked with Andy Galvin and Phil Holmes on that. And Andy and I became buddies over all these years. It's been neat to have him as a friend. He irritates a lot of people, though. He wants to do that on purpose, I think. He's trying to goad us because he wants us to think about what we say. For me, he goaded me with this right here, putting a feather in the Indian's hair. And he said they didn't do that here. And his partner, what was his name? Tompkins. He says, Andy, you don't know. But this here is Andy's grandmother. And she had a pet wolf. So I honored Andy with that. And all this culture of the Indians and how they dressed and the animals they honored over here. Here's some more about how they dress. And then a little bit here about the Victorian era after the, what was the 1868 earthquake? So that earthquake caused this chapel here to crumble and fall. And to the best of everybody's research, this is how it really did look before the earthquake. It had these, what do you call them? Buttresses on the side to hold it up in prior years, but one of the head padres, he decided it didn't look very good. So he took down those buttresses and down came the mission. And this one was moved over to Burlingame, I believe.
Yes, it's relocated to El Camino Real and State Street. It's beautifully restored if anybody wants to visit it. I took photographs of it when it was being moved over the course of a week.
Pretty cool, huh? Okay, so here is something that came to my attention when I started going to these conferences about the Indians and the missions. They happen all over the state. I forgot the name of the organization. But I wanted to learn from those historians. And I became sensitive from hearing them talk that I have been romanticizing the Indians at the missions. And I needed to include the truth. This here is one of the Catalonian soldiers that accompanied the fathers to the missions. And these two are runaways. They were tied up by their hands and pushed forward and coming back to the mission by this soldier, Catalonian soldier, Catalonia, Spain. And I learned that these soldiers were actually prisoners of the Spanish before they became soldiers to the missions. That said a lot to me. Does it say anything to you about what kind of character these soldiers might have been, where they were prisoners and now they were elevated to a position of authority like this? I think that it counts for a lot of meanness, and that these friars weren't exactly totally responsible for the way the Indians were treated. Right here, those are Indians. And Father Duran had a little orchestra, and he taught them how to read. These uniforms came from French soldiers and they were purchased in San Francisco from French ships. Isn't that fun to learn all that stuff? Anyway, I think I better pass on. You got to know who that is. Yes. Yes. And this is a gold rush hopeful miner. One of the accounts I read was that the Mexicans would stand up here leaning against these posts while this was crumbled down, and they would watch these gold rush miners come into town and giving them the evil eye. I think it was implied that maybe they wanted to steal from them.
I want to share a really brief story about Kit Carson. Before he came out with John C. Fremont in the 1840s, he came out here in the 1830s when it was under the Mexican government, and he stayed right here at Mission San Jose. He asked the Padres whether he could go down to Alameda Creek and hunt for beaver, and they permitted him to do so. And he caught 2,200 beaver in 1 week. And he had them taken up to Yerba Buena when there was no San Francisco and put on a ship all the way around the Horn of South America back to New York City, where he had them made into fur hats and coats and other garments for men and women. And then he sent them over to Europe to be sold as the conqueror of the Western North America, which was not the United States. And he made himself a cool $1 million back then. So he was a real entrepreneur.
That's a cool story. I want to tell a cool story about him too, only it's not as fun, actually. There was an Indian here at this mission under Father Duran, whose name was Estanislaus. You know about him? Oh my goodness. Estanislaus was Indian from around the Sacramento area of that river, Stanislaus. Well, the river was named after Stanislaus, not because he came from there, but because he had escaped from this mission. And one of the stories I read about why he escaped from this mission was because his wife here was taken to the Santa Clara mission, and he didn't like that too much. So Stanislaus was a good-looking Indian, according to all accounts. He was much bigger, head and shoulders bigger than the other Indians. He had the muscles of a horse, and he was really smart. So Father Duran took him in and taught him Spanish and taught him all kinds of Spanish culture. And Father Duran made Stanislaus the head of all the Indians. Now, when they took away his wife, he now had the connection with all these Indians that were at the mission. And I forget the number now, 1,500 or something like that. So Stanislaus secretly met with these Indians to tell them that he wants retribution for them taking his wife. And he also got connections with the Indians at the Santa Clara mission, as well as the Indians at the Santa Cruz mission, and clear down to Santa Barbara. And he actually got together more than 2,000 Indians, and they came up here and rescued his wife from the Santa Clara mission. And as well, they took horses and cattle and probably a lot of other things. And they proceeded back to his home up there, I think it's just south of Sacramento River. And the city of Sacramento. And actually, I have been on that Stanislaus River in a kayak, a pontoon kind of thing, whitewater river rafting on a level 5 river, and it was terror. But it was absolutely beautiful. And I'm thinking, Stanislaus came from there. I mean, there's no question about it. He came from a great looking place. He was well provided with food, and they had just a really good culture going there. And they were taken away by these soldiers. So anyway, he went back to that river with his Indians, and one of our local people here joined in with Catalonian soldier party and went after these Indians. Kit Carson was among them, going after to kill the Indians. Well, Stanislaus was a lot smarter than the rest of these people that came after him, and he was able to dodge them all. They couldn't find him, and there was no killing, no incident, but they couldn't find Stanislaus. So eventually there were 2 more parties that went to get Stanislaus, and all that was stolen. And the last party came from San Francisco. I forgot the names of the people, but they didn't stand out to me anyway. But they eventually got back to the Stanislaus area on his river and burned them out. But they couldn't find Stanislaus. He had escaped that situation alone and went back to Father Duran and asked for his forgiveness. And Father Duran says, don't tell anybody you're here, but you can stay here. I forgive you. And so Stanislaus stayed there till he was about 48. He died. And that's the unexciting end of that story. But I thought it was a pretty exciting story.
Interesting story.
He never really got his wife back. I did hear that she was saved, but she didn't get to be with him in the mission. She was outside in an Indian encampment outside of the mission. I better hurry along. This is the mission chapel, and it was commissioned by Phil Holmes. He wanted to use this on the cover. Actually, he wanted to use this on the back cover of his book of the history of Mission San Jose. And the picture that is on the back cover of the book now was another artist who is really very good from our area. He's just a wonderful artist. But Phil and all finally decided that this is the one they wanted to put on the cover of the book, which was an honor to me. And Phil asked me to do many, many, many illustrations about the Indian culture and about John C. Fremont coming. And so I did a big picture of that with all his Huskell buddies. And I remember doing one of Sutter, and I can't remember why, but it was a great painting. Great. I love doing the illustrations. And he signed my book. He said, I'm the best artist in the West. He's my friend and buddy. So one of the things I regret about this picture, although I love this picture and I have it hanging in my studio, I regret that I did not put a lot of pigeons in here and have them flying up there and use a lot of space with the elegance of the pigeons. But this was a learning experience to me too, because I was learning about how to paint white. White isn't always white. So this has different kinds of refractions of light. And now that's just a real interesting study of mine. Okay. The Masonic home. Who was it that wanted to know about that? I think Victor and Go, they want to know about that. Masonic home, people met me on the street when I was doing a Fremont Art and Wine Festival. And they wanted to celebrate their, what was it, the 100th anniversary. So that was a lot of fun. I was scared to death to do that one because I really didn't understand about the Masons very well. And the people that I worked with were absolutely wonderful. And we became really good friends, and the wife as well. And we did a lot of traveling together, and they gave me all this research material. And there is, yeah, it's their 100th anniversary. So this was what, I forgot what year it is. 1898. 1898 is the number I'm looking for. In 1898, there wasn't a lot of anything around where it currently stands. And so they became a self-sufficient little community all by themselves. They really were able to have their own water and raise their own food, make their own wine, and very independent. They were living in a home in Sacramento and then built this. And they had children in here as well as adults. And that didn't work out real well with the children being with these adults. So they went down to the LA area, Covina, and they had a children's facility for orphans. But now it's both. They've upgraded to being both orphans and adults. And this, of course, is the entranceway. They were going to rebuild the entranceway to the facility just like this, but it got to be real modern today, if you ever take a look. And this here was the temple that they had. This was the old temple that they had. This window here is a window out of this temple. And what I did here was choose these 5 columns. Let's see. Well, that's 4 columns. 1, 2, 3, 4. Well, whatever. These columns are these columns. Now that's 1, 2, 3. I'm too wiggly to count, right? Is that 5 columns or 6 up there? Huh? 6? Well, then the 2 of the columns would have been right here. But these are the Italian columns they had put in, and then they had these signatures, these drawings are all symbols for the Masons. And these 2 columns are in the main entryway lobby to go upstairs. And this big window is in that stairway. And I today don't know what that means. They have all these symbols, you know. And I'm not a Mason, so I never did find out. what that is.
The trade.
True, true. Like there's a trowel and yeah. But I don't know a whole lot of them, honestly. I do know that this was the antique room. And this is, like I told you, where a window from the chapel up there. This antique room has furniture from General MacArthur. That's what this is here. And I meticulously did all this work. Can't believe it. All these stones and all this design. It's all there. And they told me they have never seen a painting yet that has our California state flower and bird. So I had to put that in. And I put in the gladiolas. Thank you very much. Okay. So they loved this. They asked me if I would go through the same procedures with them to do another one. And I said I would. And then but we didn't ever get that far. They sold so many full-size paintings to the lodges, and if the lodge didn't want a full size, they got a half size. And most of the lodge, most of the lodges in California got one of these, and they paid for it. So I know I missed something in telling everybody because I didn't hold this mic up close. Apologize. Niles. Anybody here interested in Niles? This first was commissioned by a man who had a senior retirement type place in Niles. And he wanted me to put his facility into the painting. And anyway, that was, did I put it in? There it is. Here's his facility right there. And he sold that. Oops, he sold that. And I don't know where the original is now. He took a lot of paintings. I shouldn't say he took them, but he purchased them. He paid for everything. He was a good man, but he just sold his business, and I don't know what happened to the paintings. So here we have a main feature, the Niles Depot. Whoops, there we are. The Niles Depot was built in 1901. It was a good thing to do because they had all these trains coming in from Niles Canyon and from San Jose and from Oakland. And this is, I think, this is the only one remaining of this style that the Central Pacific ever made. And they took the wood out of Santa Cruz redwoods and built this. And I think it's wonderful. It still stands and it's still really beautiful. The thing here that I couldn't do was paint it exactly the way it really is. I think it had 7 columns. And I put that in another painting that's coming up. Are we going to stay here till 9 o'clock?
We have 2 hours.
Okay, let's do this. Over here is the S&A studio, but I wanted to, because it's gone, I wanted to emphasize what really is here. And this, was a place where Charlie Chaplin used to go. And you can still see some of that paraphernalia inside at the tea house. And which is such a fun place to go. I'd love to go there with all of you guys. And of course, here's Bronco Billy. And this was an ideal place for them. Of course, this was our first Hollywood before Hollywood. And this is to help with celebrating the Wildlife Festival in Niles. The challenge for me actually was painting these trees. I really had a time with that. So what I ended up doing was cutting out the shape of these leaves and using the cutout shape as a template for the trees. And now that began a whole new episode for me in painting trees, which I love to do. I still love to do that. And let's see. Up here we have the Shin House and Vallejo Mills. Vallejo Mills was a little town before Niles. Wait a minute, is that, oh, Vallejo Mills is there, but that's the adobe that's over by Roding Park, Roding, California Nursery. And the Belvoir Hotel. And
The Nile sign.
oh yeah, there it is. Yep. Well, it was before World War II. And during World War II, that was covered so that the Japanese wouldn't find them. There was a lot of fear about the Japanese. But that is, we've got people here that are really affected by that. So they are wonderful people, and it's just one of the embarrassing things about America. Okay, I'm ready to go on. Oh, this I got to tell you. Why is that couch up there in the tree? Well, I had a buddy who had a business reupholstering right there, and he moved around the corner, but I just had to put him in there. This was the bank for Niles, and this was a funeral parlor for Niles. And this I thought was one of the cutest houses back there, although it's getting run down. Okay. Union City. Yeah, it was Washington Township Hospital wanted this picture. And my retirement friend, that retirement home friend, he had already paid for 2 paintings that I did for him. And so I thought, well, it's about time I paint Union City for myself. I sold a mural in a tile form to the city. It's in the city hall, I guess next to the city manager's office. And he was a delight to work with. And I sold a full-size print to the Union City Library. And they asked me to come and unveil the painting there and give a speech to the community. And then I just wanted I met with Tom Kitayama. That was his name, right? Tom Kitayama. So I really honored him. I really respected him. And I just gave him a gift. So they put it in the Kitayama Elementary School. And then there's another tile mural at Washington Hospital. And it was Farber. Nancy. Oh, she had a name like mine. That's funny, don't you think? You didn't laugh. Anyway, Nancy Farber was the CEO of Washington Hospital, and she was delighted beyond belief for having these tile murals, which is in the West Wing entrance. there's Union City. And I am really proud of this picture because it shows so much diversity and this working together. I have a high opinion of Union City. I know they have problems, but in my impression of everybody at City Hall and in the neighborhoods, they really do respect one another, and they have so much tolerance for all the diversity there. Here is Tom Kitayama welcoming people from other countries. And these would be Portuguese at the Dakota School. And here's that, our Fremont train station before the one that you saw earlier in Niles, it looked exactly like this. And they want to put one up. The Niles Canyon Railroad Association wants to put one up just like this for their museum yard. So that would be fun. And I chose this church because I just love the architecture. And it was such a main focal point for the town for so long. It was a Catholic church. And I know that the Chinese are using it for church, but maybe it's the Chinese Catholics. I'm not sure. Oh, but what? A mosque? Currently. Oh, that's new to me. Up here is a lot of history that is really important. And when I went to speak at the schools about this painting, I really tried to emphasize why this is so important. There's so many sloughs over there that they became really good ports for the scows. I was talking earlier about these flat bottom boats that would come in. Some larger ones would come in and be way out there in the water. But these flat bottom boats brought people from San Francisco here, and they took produce from here to San Francisco. Here's the Indians who first started using this port to take hides on these kind of ships and the longboats that are there. So it's a 9-mile walk from the mission to this port. And the Indians would carry the hides on top of their head, or they would use these carts, an idea borrowed from the Spanish, I think. But this was really the beginning, I think, of major development for Northern California. And it was John Horner who brought in this little steamboat. If everybody talked about this ship he had that was called the Union, and I had in my mind it was one of those great big whaling ships from Boston, but it turned out to be like this. And because this is such a significant place, the Alameda County built this or used this store, a general store, as the first courthouse for Alameda County. And the plaque for that courthouse is still is out there. In Alvarado, but I was trying to think of the cross street so you could find it. This is a Filipino center, and I put that in. This is the Alvarado Hotel. And that was one of the first hotels here in Union City. They had a number of really gorgeous Victorian ones for all the people that came through here. But this one is still standing. And it's been used for many things, including Second Chance used it for helping people get a better start in life. And this would have been not a whaler, a ship captain's home. and here too. Now, what I really like about this church, and it's not there anymore, is it? Or is it? It was built largely by the daughters of this one. It was a Presbyterian church. (1861 to 62). And the original one was built by you've heard of Clara Holly Patterson? Well, it was her sister that got this one going in the first year that he was talking about. Yes, Reverend Breyer, William Breyer. He went and visited because they didn't have a main pastor. Breyer went everywhere, Northern California. Anyway, I just loved the history behind that, and I tried to follow the history of all the sisters and children of George Holly and that whole family. Actually, I'm trying to write a book about Clara Holly Patterson. I would like to read that one too. Okay, what else do I need to say? Oh, this is one of the ship captains. This is the Holy Ghost ceremony of the Portuguese. And of course, that's the farmer's market. And I've had a lot of flack from people asking me, why in the world do I have these cranes up here? Well, I really got involved with him, and he's Japanese. And so everything in the borders is like Japanese design. And I know they highly regard the cranes, but the cranes were also here for the wheat fields we used to have. Now they're in the San Joaquin Valley, and they come every day to the wheat fields and grain fields in the San Joaquin Valley. But here they are in the Union City area. Oh, and here's the main Japanese Association Buddhist building. And they've always had a center, Japanese center, to welcome new Japanese people into the community and to help them get adjusted to being in America. So, how's that? Okay, Niles Canyon Railroad. The Union, that's a very good question. I'm glad you asked it. There's a lot of stuff around here that's named Union and Washington. And that's because this area was for the Union and not the separation of the southern states. I'm losing my words. Yeah, the Confederate States. This area was not for slavery. There was some slavery, but it really wasn't welcome. So we had in Fremont, we had the Union Hotel, I think it was, and a Washington Hotel. It just was really common in those days to name things, not just in this area, but in the West, to identify if you're for the Confederacy or for the Union. John Horner was, I didn't tell you about that. That's got to be another day. Okay. Yeah, some people think that's why it was named. That was John Horner's steamship. And let's see, already, really early, he was declaring that he was for the Union. And there were actually 3 towns, Tim. there were 3 towns. There was New Haven, Alvarado, and Dakota. And there was a Union City. So that's 4 little towns. And they did all combine. And so that's a good assumption why it's called Union City, because they all came together. Here's Niles Canyon Railroad. Now, I had gone up to the president and asked him if he'd like one of these. And we were approaching the anniversary of the That's right.
Yeah.
So we wanted to celebrate the original Transcontinental Railroad. According to the stories I've heard, the claim is that the last golden spike was driven on the track in the canyon. The last golden strike
but the last trail was put in Mossdale. I haven't been on that.
Yeah. There's no golden spike here for this.
I know Henry Baum used that way.
You know what?
The reenactment, historically, last spike was, like I say, over in the San Joaquin Valley. This was, we can talk about that. Yeah.
Well, I never heard anything like that before. I also have read other people's reports about that golden spike and it looked to me like everybody wants to claim this. Thank you very much, girlfriend. So when I talked to Henry Baum, who's the president of the Niles Canyon Railroad, he said that what he's really concerned about was that the people would understand that this railroad that we have now connects from Niles to Sunol to Pleasanton. And even though it doesn't go out there to that Pleasanton station, which is now painted gray and white, but still stands, the railroad is on its way out to a very close place to this original station. And they're fast approaching Pleasanton. And then we'll have a longer ride to take when we catch the train. And I wanted to feature the engines of that this railroad association highly regards and the ones that they are just proud of. So I came out with these, and my husband can tell you the names of these. I know this is a 440, and this up here is a 440. But this one I know is a cab forward. And I went to the Sacramento Railroad Museum to see one of these. And I want to tell you right now, it is not the size of this. It is probably twice as big. And it is just huge. It's just awesome that a train engine could be that big. But I asked Henry Baum, is it all right with him that the scale is not the same as what it would be? He said it's fine. And also getting these bridges in an angle that would work for the approaching of the engine, that was a big challenge. But Henry Baum said it's fine. So I said, thank you. And of course, we have in here the Chinese who did work on the Central Pacific Railroad to come through Niles Canyon. And they were really significant, so we honor them. And the other thing that Henry wanted was for me to show Joyland, which is a former resort along the track in the canyon. And apparently there were like 20 or more resorts in the canyon. And many of them had a pavilion like this. And they would bring in bands from, like this one came from Niles. And then there was a Pleasanton band and a Sonol band. There were many different bands that would come in and entertain for dances of people coming in on the train from all over Northern California. They would come from San Francisco on the train for a vacation time on the river. And they would camp in these kind of tents and much bigger tents where they could bring the family and the uncles and their children and the aunts and their children. These would be huge tents. When I first learned about these kind of tents when I did the Pacific Grove painting, people would not just come to stay overnight or for a weekend. They stayed for weeks, 3 weeks to 3 months. And I studied the life of camping in tents in the Victorian times. And the most fascinating one to me was Phoebe Apperson Hearst from Hearst Castle. And she had these kind of Chinese lanterns all over the grounds of her tent, which was huge. And then she had Persian carpet all over on the grounds and Persian carpet in her huge tent. And she had a big wrought iron bed and a maple writing desk. I mean, and she had Chinese cooks. She was a glamper, but a lot of people were, and they really set up big time along the river. It was just a way of life. And I was telling you that people came in on trains to do this kind of thing. And one of the big resorts was up there by Vallejo Mills, where that is today. It was just lots and lots of them. They would
Had warm springs that came up and bubbled out of the water. That's why it's called Warm Springs.
Yes. Did I show the picture of Warm Springs Hotel in another picture? Yeah. They had 9 hotels there at Warm Springs Hotel for people to enjoy those springs. In Phil Holmes' book, I did a picture of the Spanish people there washing clothes in the Warm Springs. Anyway, here we go. I wanted to tell you about how they would take their beer from Joyland and put it down into the river, keep it cold. And there were not only were there I was going to tell you there were food trucks drawn by horses that would come into these resorts. So there was always ice cream for the kids too. All right, the Country Club of Washington Township. Today it's called the Country Club of Washington Township Women's Club. And I was commissioned by the club to paint their history. Let's see. Yes, we are honored to have the Honorable Miss Mitchie Yee. So Richie helped me so much with the research of this painting, which was eventually unveiled at the Fremont Library. And the original is at the Washington Hospital now in the West Wing in the volunteer center, and they promised that they were going to remodel the downstairs and in the area where the library is now, and they were going to put this painting down there. But that's going to take a bit because I haven't seen them start yet. Okay. So here we are. What I was trying to do was start here at the club. Actually, I wish I could move this bar. Yeah. Yeah, that was fun. Anyway, in behind this bar, it tells all the different categories of interest that these women had. There were some over 200 people, 200 women from Union City, Newark, and the Fremont townships. And there were lots of categories in here that each one would specialize in. One would be like the history, another would be education. And so some of the things that the women accomplished, this is just the 1956 union of all the like Mission, San Jose area, Centerville, Niles, and Warm Springs. So all this area joined together and incorporated in 1956. But these women started pushing for that way back in the 1940s somewhere. And it took a long time, but they really were big on campaigning for that. That's a big deal with them. They campaigned for a new high school. This one was 1921, but before that they had a what was it, a 3-story, 4-story wooden building that was not safe, and the plumbing was not good, and the stairways were breaking, and it just really needed a new school. And so they were campaigning for a new school, and that's what they got. In the what corner? Who was the founders? They were the founders. There. Oh, right up there. Yeah. You guys, I mean, these ladies were the founders of this group, the one that's meeting tonight. Did you want to say any more about that? Okay. This group, their first project, however, was up here. And it was in 1904. They came out with the first published, the red one. No, not the red one. This purplish one, I think it is. That was the first history that was put together for this area. In my research, I made an assumption because I believe this woman here is one of J.J. Vallejo's daughter, Guadalupe Vallejo. She was really good friends with Clara Holly Patterson, and her Clara's father and Vallejo were really good friends. And Clara was growing up at the same time as her being around. And she even, she even willed the keys to her adobe that was across from the mission. She willed the keys to that to Clara Holly Patterson. I mean, they were good friends, they had to be. So that was interesting to put all these people together. And because she also is a known historian at the Bancroft Library and telling the history of this area, I assumed that with her network of friends here and her ability to write, that she probably was right involved with the writing of this history. So since the first one, there's been 2 other books that have been updated. And I know I read this one early on, but the one I was able to really study was this one. Thank you to Miss Michi Yi. And I really love doing all this work around here, you know. But I had a few bloopers. One of them was the paper that I used. I don't know what was wrong with it for real. But it was that roll that I got from England. Did I tell you about that roll? A 5-foot tall roll. And I had gotten way into, I've used it quite a bit. So I was getting towards the end. And I really think probably what the problem was, there was no sizing on the paper. Got to have sizing. And so I put in some sizing, but it just was awful. I'm telling you, it was like a painting on toothpaste. It was just awful. So I had painted so much already that I was determined that I'm not going to throw away all that work and start over. And maybe that was a mistake I made. I should have started over maybe, but I ended up, these are all cutouts. Like this oval is a cutout from another piece of paper. And all of this stuff is cut out and placed in place. It just, and all of this, everything. Well, I think it worked out pretty good. And I didn't give up. So I have it written there, 1896. And Clara Hawley Patterson was the second president. And I believe that Clara's mother was quite involved with it too. I have found different pictures that said these things, and I've looked for them since, and I can't find them. This here was first built in 1914, the clubhouse. And the first pictures I have of it showed tree poles that were scraped of the outer edge, the bark. And so, and there was an old jalopy parked next to it, probably owned by Clara herself when cars first came out. I was going to look up when did Ford start making those cars. It was around this time. Anyway, it's now the Orthodox Church. And another blooper that I haven't told Mitchie about. I wish I would like to go back and change some of this right here, because this is not the reason why they wanted a new hospital. It wasn't for grandma, it was for her mom. And I need to change that sign because this hospital, the old hospital, didn't have a maternity ward. And with that problem, these ladies got together and started pushing and promoting for a new hospital. So don't tell anybody, okay? San Francisco. Let's see. This was the year 2000. And I had been working on, prior to this, I'd been working on a project for the state in celebrating our state's sesquicentennial. This was a time when Pete Wilson was the governor. He's Republican. And then we had Gray Davis, a Democrat. And that transition from Wilson to Gray Davis happened right when we were going to celebrate this sesquicentennial and the gold rush. And we were going to celebrate the tall ships. And we were going to celebrate the women, historical famous women during that time when we became a state, and we were going to celebrate the orange tree industry in Southern California. And I was going to paint all these pictures to help raise money for the sesquicentennial to bring in the tall ships. Well, that turned out a major fiasco. There's a lot of people really hurting still today because it closed down. The whole effort closed down. And I had put in the first painting, the Gold Rush. And it was approved by our state historian. Man. Remember our state historian, Kevin Starr. That was a big deal because they treat him like he's God. I'm telling you, he's really big news. Well, I was so disappointed with that whole effort. Pretty much gone. I put 2 years into painting that Gold Rush picture, 2 years. And the government, the IRS didn't consider it, they considered my expenses just a play day. So I had to pay a lot of taxes on something that didn't yield for me. And I was mad. So I said, I'm going to go to San Francisco and we're going to do something with this situation for me. And I went to Willie Brown, and he was real happy about this whole idea. And so he really supported me. I needed his approval because I wanted to put him in the painting. And he gave me his approval, and he gave me lots of pictures. And I showed him that I was going to put him on the trolley, and he would be leading San Francisco into the new millennium. There he is, leading the new millennium. And here's Herb Cain. I hear things. So my focal point here is here and over here and over here. The Mission Dolores. And here's Chinatown. And Mitchie has somebody in Mitchie's family, I think, was working down there at Chinatown and was wearing one of these costumes. So that encouraged me to paint this actually in her honor. Can't remember all the details now. Okay. So this painting took the fastest time for me to paint. I did this in 4 months. And Willie Brown was really wanting me to put in Treasure Island. Where is Treasure Island? Oh, there it is. Because he was now turning the Treasure Island into a housing development, and he wanted to sell that idea to the people. And he gave me the unveiling for this. Oh, a challenge for me was this bridge. And this was the first kind of a way to do things for me, and I loved it. And people always say to me, where's the earthquake? I said, well, the earthquake hit at this time. So I have something about the earthquake. Okay, so what motivates me to paint montages? Well, I really like learning history, and I really like affirming people. So this is something that ideas that just come to my mind. And I like this, I like this quote that I don't see. The quote is from Goethe. Anybody know Goethe? He was a German philosopher. And he said, if you can think it, begin it. Boldness has genius, magic, and power. And that's a big motivation for me because I can think it. I think in my mind how maybe a history story can be put together. And so he says, if you think it, begin it. You can do this. And boldness, it all starts with those little paper napkin plan, draft. Okay, we're probably out of time now.
Just if I might, so people know. I'd like to thank Nancy Pratt from Newark for her extraordinary presentation this evening and the numbers. And how might people, if they wish to commission additional arts work, are you open to that? And please.
You can contact me. My name is in the phone book, Nancy Pratt. It's I have another name too that goes with Nancy Pratt. It's my beloved husband, Bob. And we've been married 51 years. This September, we were married. So I do have a website, and it is on this brochure that I hope you all got one. What? Yeah, nancypratt.com. You can also look it up at Nancy Pratt Watercolors, and you'll see a good portion, if not all, of my watercolors.
Thank you so much.
Well, you honor me. Thank you.
So for questions, not to see but the recording, and they'll do home, still, I think, okay, but the recording was the issue. We wanted to make sure that we had a wrap on the recording. So please answer.
Well, people, are you interested in what motivates me more? It motivates me just to learn, and then to learn more about what I just learned. And I did major in human development at Cal State Hayward, and I think that the human development and the history makes a really great combination. To learn about our culture, what is significant about our land and who we are. And I really enjoy meeting the different groups, Portuguese, the Ohlone Indians, the Maidus, the Miwoks. I mean, they all have something wonderful. When I did the Gold Rush painting, the Maidus and the Miwoks didn't want to have anything to do with it. But it was their land that we took. And when I told them how I was going to honor them in this painting, in the side borders and their culture and what they have contributed, why, they just came out and bought all kinds of my Gold Rush picture. It was really great to make friends. I did some history of Lake Tahoe, and those were starts with a W, the Washoe Indians. And they were just thrilled that I painted their culture into that Lake Tahoe picture. And I just honored them with giving them one of the reproductions, the full size. And it was just a great relationship to meet with all these people. So that is motivating to me, the relationships that I get. Also, the relationships with the experts on the subjects that I'm trying to research. And I really like to keep close relationships with East Bay Regional Park people. They are just great. And people like Phil Holmes, they're just great. I like to keep relationships with artist friends that make good critiques for me. You know, just like a author of books, they need to be critiqued, and they get really critiqued. But I have good friends that are really kind to me and honest, and I love it. I love their critiques. Like I said, doing the relationships and all is fun. So other artworks, I want to paint. I do paint paintings for outdoors, and that's why I choose acrylic on concrete board. I have a great big one in my backyard on the fence. It's a real close-up one of an iris. It's just continues to fascinate me. And I have lots more concrete board to make more paintings. If anybody wants an outdoor painting. And then I love to do mosaics. I almost brought one of my mosaics here. It's my friends call it my Tsarina chair. Because well, it is very elaborate with blue and white and gold tiles and florals all over it. And it's just, I was inspired by antique plate I have. And I turned it into a great big mosaic chair. And then I like to do calligraphy. And you've been seeing my calligraphy in all these paintings. And especially I did a lot of calligraphy in that painting for the country club, women's country club. And it felt great to just do that. I mean, it's a big risk, isn't it? To paint calligraphy on a big painting. What if I did a blooper? Well, I found some of that ground. Remember I told you about that paper ground that I can just paint over the bloopers. So I feel a lot of freedom to do stuff and just push my limits. Because I think there's always a way to recover. And I don't tend to worry about it too much, except for that darn paper from that country club picture. And then I like creative writing, and I've already mentioned that I've been trying to write a book about Clara Holly Patterson. And with her going, she was born in 1853. And I really got interested in her when I heard that her father had a red hotel in Mission, San Jose. And that it was the first dance floor for the whole area, and it had rooms for rent. Well, I come from Fresno from a motel. Did I tell you about that motel business? So I thought this Clara Holly Patterson was just like me. But I found out she was born after her father moved from the hotel. Anyhow, I think she was a wonderful girl, and apparently Patterson thought so too. He was like 30 years older than her when they got married, but she was already going around with Patterson when she was 9 years old, just out and about in their horse and buggy. And I was going to tell about her father working for Vallejo, and her father built the mill wheel and the flumes that brought the water from Joyland. Remember I showed you Joyland? Well, there's a big dugout area in the creek there, and that was the pond that the flumes came to bring the water on these wooden flumes down to the mill. Well, I learned that these early people who built these flumes like to ride them like a slide. And they would ride the water down the slide clear down to the bottom. So I wanted to include that idea of fun and play in the, so this is a novel, a historical based novel, using my imagination. What, I'm sorry, what'd you say? I don't know about that, but it probably is. It would be a natural place to do it.
The other side of it, the Vallejo Mill was on the north side, the secret sidewalk was on the south.
We're all agreeing with each other. That sounds good. I don't get it myself.
I've never heard of the secret sidewalk, so I can't. Can you talk about that?
So some of my current projects are portraits of Jesus and children. And I did a lot of work for depicting the Passion story for the Centerville Presbyterian Church this year. And Annabelle and Sheila joined me with that. So we're now good friends. And I also teaching watercolors is coming up. But that the whole idea has to be developed. Okay, there's one thing that's not on there. There's one thing that's not on there. Do I need this? Oh, he turned it off. The question is, who is the real Nancy Pratt? Anybody know who is the real Nancy?
It's always evolving.
Yeah, I'm a work in process. So, but that's what they asked me to talk about. And I thought I could say that the first thing I do in the morning is pray. And I ask that the Lord would satisfy my heart with his unfailing love. I really need that. I thought they told me that. Anyway, yeah, that's my prayer first thing in the morning, and I need it for my sanity. And then another big thing about me is, has anybody heard of Johnny Cash? Who hasn't, right? Do you remember this song that says, I keep a close watch on this heart of mine? Well, that's my song through the day. I keep a close watch on this heart of mine. Because you're mine, I walk the line. Well, it's him that I'm walking the line for. And I really want to keep a close watch on this heart of mine. I want to have goodness in it. I want to have truth in it. And I want to have beauty in it. Otherwise, I won't see truth, goodness, and beauty in my subjects that I paint. And I've been growing personally because of this and learning better how to deal with people who want to confront me with their rights and wrongs and my wrongs. And people that's always been a difficulty of mine. So, but I'm learning, and I've had it all through this. I've had difficulty like that all through my career, not really knowing how to deal with it. So what I'm really like is a golden retriever. I'm loyal. You can pat me on the head anytime and I will just purr. I need close relationships like a retriever. I'm compassionate and adaptable. And I like joint decision making. That's why I like working on committee. And most artists don't really like working on committee. They want to do what they want to do. Like, there was a trouble over there in Livermore Library with an artist who wanted to do it the way he wanted to do it. And the town just didn't appreciate it. But finally they got him to change it. So I like joint decisions, and I don't like to have sudden changes. I like to, plan and work together, make rough drafts, but talk about it, not just, I really don't like to be excluded from decision making. And I am a people pleaser, but I have been learning to draw boundaries and learning to say no when confronted. So that's all I'm going to say about that. The real Nancy Pratt. Go ahead.
Takes about 6 days. I'm sure based on all the historical facts and so forth, you make your composition of the picture. During that 6 to 8 months, would there be any chance that you change your mind? Which one should be here or there?
Yes, sir.
And then you make a change?
Yes. Well, I redraw it. Mm.
So when you make a composition, what will you base? Understanding, interpreting historical events, facts and figures, to put in the composition of this screen.
What? Yeah, the 3, 3, and 3. I have 3 primary focal points and 3 secondary and 3 tertiary focal points. But your question is, how do I choose those 3? Well, I tried to balance what still exists and what doesn't exist anymore. For instance, like in that Pleasanton picture, there was that Cottinger barn that was a jail. It's an adobe that still stands. And so that one turned out to be a secondary focal point. But also I try to find in the left-hand bottom corner, I try to put something in there that is romantic. And the way the Greeks say this is that from starting at also our Western culture, but starting up there in the top right corner, we start reading and our eyes go across and come down and end up there. And the Greeks always end up either in this corner or that corner or that corner or that corner. They don't feature things right in the middle. They feature towards the middle, but more towards those corners. So by putting our Western culture together with this Greek idea, I look for the most beautiful and romantic thing to put in that left corner. And then opposite of that would be one. And up there at the top, that would be the placement of things that, now your question I think really is, what's most important that I would choose those things? And like I said, if it's history that's still alive, that's still standing, and it's significant history, that will be one of the things.
Thank you so much. You'll be available for questions and great. Thank you. Thank you everyone for coming this evening. And it's Nancy Pratt, Watercolors. Great.